Hello, everyone, and welcome back. If you are here for the Sports Pro Insider Series on athletes and business, you are in the right place. We'll get started here in just a little bit, but just wanted to pop in and let you know for those of you that have come in early that you're definitely in the right place, and we're gonna have a great day of content headed for you. If you want to go ahead, one of the things that's been really fun, go ahead and get involved in the chat and sort of let us know where you're dialing in from. I think our record for most nations represented in a single call is 92 different countries. So it's certainly been a global event thus far. So just to familiarize yourself with the platform, feel free to go ahead and sort of let us know where you're coming in from. Zoe calling in from London. We're also based here in London and enjoying what looks like maybe one of the last few sunny days. Gulberg calling in from Istanbul. Good to see some people calling in. Gloucestershire, UK, have not been there yet. Germany. Good. Keep those coming in. Like I said, we're always happy to see where everybody's dialing in from. For me personally, looking forward to it. I use the term athlete quite loosely. I'm a former college football player back in America. So without getting too much into what we're talking about later today, I'm excited to hear from the group of panelists that we have throughout the day. Switzerland, more Germany, more UK. Good to see everybody dialing in. Okay, it looks like we're coming up here on 1 o'clock now, so I'll go ahead and get started with our formal introduction so we can get going, because I know we've got a great panel to start off with and don't want to take up too much time. Oh, we have got someone calling in from Australia. That's either a very late night or an early morning. Okay, so everyone, hello and welcome back to the Sports Pro Insider Series. We've been off for a few weeks now with Sports Pro Live in between, but we're back now and we're here to continue to deliver some insights and engaging content for you. My name is Chris Stone. I'm the event content manager here at Sports Pro. This afternoon, we'll be looking at something that's a bit relatively new for us, and that's athletes and business. As I mentioned, I'm a former D3 college football player, so for me, it's really exciting to hear from some actual proper athletes and what they're doing, not only at the top of their sport, but what they're doing off the field. For those of you just now joining us, if you haven't already seen, the chat box is already going. Please feel free to sort of communicate with that throughout the day. Let us know where you're calling in from. Also, as well, just to get you a bit more familiar with the platform itself, I'm going to publish a poll here, which I've just gone and done. If you haven't seen on social media, we've recently published our 50 most marketable athletes, and we'll be talking about that a little bit more, but just a little question to see who's already read it. Who is this year's #1 most marketable athlete? Go ahead and participate in that poll just to familiarize yourself with the platform. As you can see throughout the day, we're going to be having a number of exciting topics where athletes are getting involved, from investments and tech startups, how athletes are using their celebrity to build further business opportunities, including hearing a little bit more about Patrick Mahomes off of his record-breaking deal. He's now a part owner of a Major League Baseball team, as well as we'll finish off with a panel on athletes discussing their transitions into careers after sports. All that will come later today, but we've got a real treat to start off the day, but we'll get to that in just a moment. The Insider Series has been running now for nearly 6 months, which is a bit scary, but that's the world we live in these days. Our next installment will be on leadership, where we have a really great lineup for you guys coming in 2 weeks' time. That includes recently confirmed R.C. Buford. He's the CEO of the San Antonio Spurs. He's a multiple exec of the year for the NBA. We'll also be joined by the NHL, Fulham FC, the FA, UEFA. Really a great lineup on October 14th coming for you. As well, we just had our Sports Pro Live event, which was quite, remarkable, the amount of engagement we received from you guys. So very thankful for everybody that joined in. But we'll be returning with another major event in 2 weeks' time, which is our Sports Pro Asia event, and just going to play a quick promo video to provide a little bit more information on that event. So we're really excited about our Sports Pro Asia event this year. We've changed up a bit of the format, but there's no doubt that Asia is the quickest growing market right now when it comes to sports and technology. And for anybody that's curious about how to get into that market, it's going to be a really insightful event for you guys to get involved in. And just like the Insider Series and Sports Pro Live, it's free to attend all of it and view all the content. You can also follow the conversation and have your say on social throughout the day using the hashtag SP Insider. You can also follow our Twitter handle at SP_influencers. Throughout the day, we'll be communicating with you, and we'll also be giving announcements about future events as well. You've already experienced the chat feature and the poll feature of the platform itself. One last quick reminder is the questions tab. For any questions you would specifically like to have asked to our panel, please make sure you're using that question tab, as the moderator will be pulling questions from there. Within the questions tab, it has a Facebook-esque feature that allows you to upvote questions. So if you see something you like, go ahead and give it a vote, as that will help move that question to the top of the list, and our moderator will know that's what needs to be asked. One final helpful hint, you'll notice the top, just to the left of the chat feature, you'll see a little bell icon. If you click that, we love how engaged you guys are, but it does create a lot of the notifications. If you click that bell sound, it'll mute all of that, and you'll be able to focus in on the content. If you're having any issues throughout the day, you can email us at support@sportspromedia.com, and we can help get you connected. Also, you can use the questions tab for any IT-related questions you might have. One popular question that is asked, so I'll just try to get it out of the way, is that every session is recorded. So if you do miss anything, you can come back to the Insider Series website under the On-Demand tab to watch anything you've missed. Or if you just want to share it with a colleague or a friend that you think they'd benefit from it, you can do that as well. So you may have seen on Monday, the 11th edition of the Sports Pro 50 Most Marketable Athletes was announced. Like I said, the poll question is relevant to that, and it looks like the majority of you have read the article, or at least guessed correctly. And this year's number one is, in fact, Lionel Messi. This year's 50mm is bigger than ever. Not only we're doing 50 most top athletes, but we're also doing the top 50 most marketable brands and properties as well. So definitely make sure you check that out. And that being said, that transitions us quite nicely into our first session of the day. We'll be beginning by looking at athlete marketability, where we'll be joined by Dina Asher-Smith, who came in at number 22 on the most marketable athletes in the world, alongside Salvatore De Angelis from Nielsen, who is our data partner, and they're going to be going through the different metrics that went into this year's 50 most marketable athletes. So with that being said, there's been enough of me talking. Very happy to hand things over to our moderator and a good friend of ours at Sports Pro, and that is Beck Smith.
Wait, technology. Hi, Chris. Thanks a lot. And welcome to Sports Pro's Live Insider Series, where we get to kick off the event today on athletes in business with this incredible panel on athlete marketability and how they build their brands. Obviously, I'm biased, but I do think it is the best panel that you guys have had so far. And we have two incredible guests. I am so over the moon to be announcing Dina Asher-Smith, the reigning 200-meter world champion, only the fastest woman in British history, gold at World Athletic Championships, silver in 100 meters, European champ, 3-time gold medalist in the 100 meter, 200 meter, 4x100 relay, which is my personal favorite, and also a very good prospect for Japan next year. Hi, Dina, welcome.
Hi everybody. Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Super stoked to have you. And Salvatore is the international head of digital at Nielsen Sports. He's responsible for all the aspects of Nielsen Sports digital and social media research capabilities, and he helps global rights holders, leagues, brands make decisions through deep insight into their stakeholders, fans, and competitors. If you haven't heard of Nielsen, I don't know where you've been in the last years. Welcome, Salvatore.
Hi all. Hi, thanks for having me. Ciao, Bex.
What's up? All right, so I think a good place to start would be with what Chris mentioned, the 50 most marketable athletes globally, that incredible report, which congratulations, Dina, 22, not so bad.
I mean, sure, thanks.
I was like, you're ahead of Van Dijk, Nadal, Tom Brady. I mean, some incredible names on
I know, I was like, okay, cool.
So now I want to hear how you actually came to that, Salvatore. What were the criteria that you used, and how did you come up with that? How did you do that?
Yeah, so thanks for these initial questions. And let's brief some introduction on how we develop this scorecard, which is really interesting in the way we mix together different athletes. In order to do so, we started from basically the social media ecosystem, basically from Instagram, which is one of the major platforms for interacting with individuals, with personalities, which are driving a lot of engagement for brands and with audience in general. And we collected several data points, more than 10 data points from Instagram, plus sentiment and conversations across the entire web, in order to mix together what we call performance KPIs like engagement rate, follower growth, fan base in general, and something more related to sponsorship and marketability, like performance on branded content against organic contents, media value for partners, frequency of posting, and all this type of more, let's say, sponsorship-related KPIs. By combining all of them together, we calculated 4 different scores: reach, relevance, resonance, and return. And these 4 are basically the main dimensions that brands are using today to evaluate the best fit in terms of influences and personalities. So we tried to replicate that approach for sports as well.
I think it's really interesting to hear all of the sort of data and how you've collected it behind the scenes. But Dina, in front of the camera on the track, how much of that do you actually take into consideration, or what are just, the context that you look at in terms of how you build your brand?
Well, for me, authenticity and integrity is number one. Like, that's key for me. And I always, when I'm thinking about building my brand or who I will partner with or what kind of work I will do, I always say, for me personally, sometimes it doesn't even matter about the price point, but it's got to be authentic to me. And I always say that if people who are just like me, so like my friends that I know from school, or women like me, or people that look like me, if I was to represent something that they wouldn't feel seen in or they wouldn't feel comfortable with, then I don't do it. And I think that's why, looking at my personal demographic, my kind of info that you sent me, I think my resonance is quite high, because I think loads of my followers understand that I wouldn't put anything out there. I wouldn't partner with anything that I don't believe in. And so that makes me quite trusted with parents. It makes me quite trusted with loads of people who can guarantee that if I wasn't behind it and if I didn't think it was good, I would not put my name near it. So that's how I go about building my brand. Besides trying to win, like, performance is key. Obviously, if I'm not running fast, nobody cares. I have to win. But one step behind that, it's also authenticity.
Yeah, one step behind you is also very many runners around the world.
Hopefully.
Yeah. No, that was great. So Dina mentioned actually, the slides that you had sent through. We'd love to pull those up now, because I think it's so interesting. So you did a whole report on Dina and how she looks in terms of her social media. Can you run us through these? They're so fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, with such pleasure, because as you can see here, we have different stories around Dina and how awesome she is on social, not only in social, and how she's using Instagram to really spread some very, very important messages to her audience. Just to start with, I mean, we have a story here which is about data, which is really, really clear. And we have another story which is equally important, even more important, which is about some values that Dina is sharing, about authenticity, as she said, about credibility, about representation, which is really, really important. We'll dig into that. Just talking about data very quickly, you can see on the left, her follower growth, 132% in the last 12 months, more than the average of the top 50 athletes that we included in the list. So
of all the other athletes.
Yeah, this is the average. 84% is the average across the list, and then you have Dina with more than 130%, so which is quite impressive. Even more impressive is the engagement rate, if you see that. So the capability of Dina of engaging with her audience on Instagram, 12.8%, which is almost 30%, versus 7% of average of the other athletes. 7% is already huge, in terms of, generally speaking, it really depends on follower base sizes, but generally speaking, a 3% engagement rate on Instagram, it's a good result. We are talking about 7% on average for the top 50, which is more than double that. We are talking about almost 30% for Dina. And is really an impressive result. And this is exactly what you can see on the right when talking about how relevant and resonant she is with her follower base. Way more than the average of the top 50 athletes. Of course, in terms of reach, she's building her fan base. You know, so that's why in terms of reach, the top 50 average is like, it's higher than Dina at the moment. She's in the phases of developing and building the fan base with an outstanding engagement rate result. So this is, from a data standpoint, something really incredible and a super interesting story to tell. If we go a level deeper in the terms in the next slide, like who are the followers, who are these audience that are following Dina, it's really, really interesting. So in terms of split, gender split, you have a 50-50. So 50% of them are male, 50% of them are female. So really super balanced. But what is really, really interesting is the split in terms of age. So you can really see how relevant she is, especially in the 18-34 years old range, but even more in the 18-24 years old range. And you can also see how the women in these younger generations are becoming extremely relevant to Dina audience. So from 13, 17, and 18, 24 years old, the majority of her fans are young girls and young women. And this is what I was, referring to when I was talking about authenticity and credibility. And this is exactly why some really super piece of contents like the campaign with Nike and even more the campaign with Barbie were so relevant on her Instagram page, because this is all about representation. The campaign with Barbie was about closing the gap, which is, super relevant message. It's not just about putting out a content with Barbie, is communicating something that is extremely important for her target and the younger generation. And in fact, the score that you can see here reflects the performance of these contents. The branded content with Nike performed 51 times better than the average Instagram contents posted in the last 12 months by Dina, but also the content with Barbie performed 3 times better than the average Instagram page of Dina in the same time frame. So super impressive.
I find that so interesting. Dina, was there anything that you saw in that where you were like, that's not something I didn't know, or was shocking to you? Or
I think I was pleasantly surprised and a little bit humbled about the relevance and the resonance bit, because obviously as an athlete we don't get to see these figures all the time. Like, I'm literally just posting and then getting on with my day,
Yeah.
But that is something that's a really core value of mine off track, and particularly with Barbie, that was a partnership that I was so thrilled to do, because that is something that is absolutely authentic to me. Like, I'm a girl, I loved dolls, but I was always playing with dolls that didn't look like me.
Yeah.
So when Barbie got to do something that looked exactly like me and I could spread that message, it was everywhere. But I think the important thing for me as well is that often whatever I put on Instagram goes onto the street. So with Barbie, I posted on Instagram, and then it was in newspapers, it was on adverts in the street, and it was on TV. I think it was on the 6 o'clock news, like that image on Instagram. But that's what I mean. For me, it's all about authenticity. And I think as you talk about the engagement rates, I know that I've got a really high engagement rate, and I try really, really hard to be as kind of warm and receptive to all my followers as possible. And for me, it's key that when I build my follower, just the number, I don't build it with just air, if that makes sense. Like, there's no point having 100 million followers if like only 1% of them interact. Like, what is the point? So for me, it's about slowly building it with authenticity. So hey, I might have, I don't know, 5 million followers by time I retire, or I might have 10 million followers, but if still 10% of those, or up to 15% of those, thoroughly engage and click and then potentially buy something that you're posting out there, that's absolutely incredible to me. So
yeah, it's so interesting. And that Nike campaign was also really incredible over lockdown. I mean,
it was hard work. It was harder than I was expecting. It was so hard.
It was like, everybody do this at home. I was like, 1, 2, nah, that's too
yeah, that was me. I was like, yeah, I can do that. I picked the exercise as well. It was my fault. I was like, yeah, I'll be great at that. And my S&C coach was like, okay. And I did it. And I was like, that was so hard. But again,
Dina,
that was so much
I
fun.
saw you trying the Cristiano's exercise as well on Instagram.
That was difficult as well. I mean, he did so well, because I think that was actually a really good part of that campaign, because we were all sports people, like the high profile people, and everybody was just stuck inside their houses fighting this common situation. And we were all doing stuff where we could relate to each other. We could easily relate to our fans. And yeah, I was able to try Cristiano's exercise, then I did mine, and everybody was able to send me videos and be like, yeah, that was hard. And I was able to write back, yeah, I know, I found it hard too. So, but it's just stuff like that, because at the end of the day, like, we're all people, we're all human, but as long as you can engage your fans and you get to relate to them on a human level, that's what it's all about, isn't it? So.
100%. And how important are, because it's a really good point about brands, because, you know, there's a different model for track and field athletes. You don't get most of your money from your team or your sport. You get it all from sponsorship, right?
Yeah.
So how important are brands for track and field? And
they are so, so important. I always say that, yeah, it is absolutely one of the hidden driving forces behind performance. Because at the end of the day, we aren't in a sport that has the prize money of tennis, or we don't have the salaries of football. So that leaves us in a completely different position in terms of not only how we live and pay our mortgages and more boring, mundane stuff, but also how we perform. Because at the end of the day, track and field, it's incredibly competitive. There can only be one world champion at a time. There can only be one Olympic champion every 4 years. So it's not like kind of like football, where, I don't know, things are a bit more subjective. So you can have, somebody might think you're the best player in the world, but they might disagree and they might choose somebody else. Like track, look, if you don't win the race, you've got no claim on being the best in the world. And for that reason, each individual athlete, we're more like Formula One teams. So when it's the Olympic final, you might see 8 women line up and you might just think it's that moment. But honestly, we've all got a team of, like, I don't know, 6, 8, even more people behind us, whether that's management, so like my agent with Pace, or it's like my coach, 2 S&C coaches, 2 physios, doctors, all these people, we need to fund them. And because we don't, all of that money that we would get kind of always depends on performance. If you don't perform, you don't get paid, if that's track and field. So brands become really important, and those deals that are kind of multi-year deals, the Olympic cycle deals, or if I've been with Nike since I was 16, so something like that becomes essential. Because at the end of the day, if you want to win, you have to fund your team. Like, it's competitive. If you want to win, you have to have the best coach in the world. You have to be able to pay the best coaches in the world, the best physios. You have to be able to travel the best, and that costs money. So we do get a lot of that support, both financial and in terms of assets, whether that's performance management, whether that's I don't know, analytics and nutrition from sponsors as well, that can help in essence with what they do. It's essential to performance. And I think probably as track and field, we should probably communicate that a bit better. But yeah, which is why integrity is so important, because if you're going to be so integral to our performance, then you're part of our team. And when we win, like, we truly win together. So we all have to be on the same page, and we all have to believe in the same values as well. So yeah, because it's not just like a tick box exercise, or I'm not just a girl that you put on your poster. Like, we become part of a bigger family. So yeah, that's very common in track and field. Very common.
it's your career that's dependent on brands, but it's also your life, isn't it? Really, I mean, it's, you know, your sustenance. It's that, you know, being able to pay your rent and the food, if you really break down to basics. So Salvatore, because we were chatting the other day, and you were talking about, so brands are very important in track and field. They're important in every sport. Maybe more so in track and field and those individual sports. But where do you see that there's a gap in what's going on with brands and what their objectives are and how they're actually using athletes?
Well, yeah, I mean, as we were discussing, something is changing in terms of how brands are getting more sophisticated in working together with athletes, because I guess this is the central point, is working synergically with athletes. And usually speaking, we have seen in the past a lot of campaigns where athletes were just testimonial, okay, just there promoting or showing a product or a campaign, whatever, which now the situation is more different. We have athletes which are creators. So brands should be working together with athletes, using the athlete's tone of voice, the athlete's, you know, capabilities and credibility to spread some different messages. So it's not only about, you know, promoting products through them, it's working together with them to increase the content production, the quality of content, and the engagement level with their audience. Because at the end of the day, what is really important is reaching and engaging a specific audience, an audience that is passionate about the athletes.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And you see the data that actually follows that. You see the data that shows when brands are actually engaging and using their athletes positively, then they get more engagement, correct?
You get more engagement, you get more local audience start following a specific brand or a specific rights holder. You know, you see a lot of stuff going on and a lot of really positive KPIs that you can have as a brand by working more closely with an athlete. And generally speaking, we see a lot of brands now start working this way with athletes. Almost 70%, 75% of our clients, brands clients, are now using personalities in general in that way. So this is a major trend, something that, you know, even more present in the industry.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And Dina, have you seen that shift as well? Have you been able to be more involved in the campaigns, in creating the campaigns, in telling the stories that you want to talk about?
100%. Yeah, 100%. I think I've always been pretty big on that anyway, because that probably comes from my mom and just the way that I was brought up. I've always just wanted to be only involved in stuff that I believe in, but definitely 100% in the last 12 months, even more so since the pandemic. Since the onset of the pandemic, I guess, people have been really looking for just honesty. Basically, like, don't just slap somebody's face on it with a smiley face like this. Like, what's the point? But people just scroll past because they're just like, great, you're just trying to sell me something. But when it's a message, and when it's something authentic, when it's something with depth and meaning, that is definitely something that is more relevant now. And I've definitely been able to. But for example, now with Nike and some of my other sponsors, when we think of a campaign, it's more like, does this resonate with you? How can we alter this to make it fit with you? Or what would you like to see from us? How can we help you as a brand? And that's a conversation that I have with many of my sponsors. And because we have to make a balance between what the brand wants and what the brand's messaging is, but also what my tone of voice is. Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't match up, it's just gonna fall through. Yeah. And I think it's definitely been a big shift towards that, and it's been something that's definitely been welcomed by me, because it helps and it makes me, I just feel better doing stuff that is entirely authentic and relevant, really. So
yeah, that really makes sense. And going back to like your authenticity and your true self and being able to express that, have you been able to use brands, or how do you get your message out? Do you use brands, or do you prefer to do that on your own platform? So I know you're very involved in, Black Lives Matter and gender equality. I mean, you're an incredible speaker, obviously.
Yeah. It depends. Thank you. Thank you. And I think it depends. It's something that I'm definitely negotiating now. I just like the idea of getting my message out there, and whether that is with or without a brand, I will pick whatever is the best way of doing that and the most powerful way of doing that in that moment. So particularly when it comes to lots of stuff around Black Lives Matter, I've been very cautious with what I engage with, because some stuff, they just kind of want your face and your voice, but they don't believe the message and they don't walk the walk. So for that, I would prefer, I've got a column in one of the big newspapers in the UK. So at the moment for that, I prefer writing in the column what I think, because for me, that's my words, completely unfiltered, exactly what I think. And it's not being kind of bought by people who don't completely believe in it. And don't get me wrong, there are loads of brands that do completely believe in it, and there are loads of platforms that I would definitely be on board to do it. But if in the presentation, if they present me with like a slideshow, or we have a conference call, or we have like a planning session, and I look and I'm like, it's like, this smells a bit inauthentic. I'm like, you know what? I wish you the best of luck, but I don't think it's going to work for me. And it's just the fact that, my voice can't be bought. But at times, there are times when I think a brand has that. Well, I mean, when we're in marketing, these brands have worked very hard to get the platform that they have and very hard to get the reach that they have. And obviously, when you've got an important message, you want to put that out there to as many people as possible. So when a brand has that and it aligns and they're authentic, particularly on the side of gender equality, and they genuinely are making inroads to make sportswomen more visible, sportswomen more marketable, and generally give young women healthier images of womanhood to aspire to, that is something I'm fully on board with. And for example, Barbie, or for example, Nike, they've just done a huge maternity campaign and stuff like that. That is stuff that I'm wholeheartedly behind, because they're using their platform not just to tick a box and not just to not be behind the drag curve or being reactive. They're doing it proactively and they're trying to make a change. And that's something that I will lend my voice to 100%. But I think that just becomes from an individual assessment from myself, whether I think the occasion warrants me doing it with a brand or warrants me just kind of getting on TV and saying it. You know, like sometimes, yeah, exactly. It's just what's most appropriate. And at the end of the day, it is authenticity. And I know sometimes, sometimes it's really tempting to just take all the checks and do everything you can. But what's the point? Like when you retire, what's the point? Your voice is being lent to people that don't do what you want to do, and sometimes you can't make money out of being yourself and being authentic, and that's okay. You need to just stand up and say what you got to say, and you don't always have to do it for a return. And I think that's probably not the best thing to say in front of this. But you know, sometimes you just can't be paid. But I think, but then with that mentality, that's why people have a high engagement rate with you, because they trust what you're going to say.
Exactly.
Okay, good. Salvatore's still with us. I think his video disappeared, at least for me. But I was going to ask you, Salvatore, have you seen the data supporting also what Dina's saying? There must be sort of this blend of sports, but also lifestyle. So someone that's really authentic like Dina is kind of like a marketeer's dream. But have you seen that in the data as well, that brands and for marketability, it's really important to have that blend?
Absolutely, yes, but always keeping authenticity really as a focal point, as Dina was saying, and this is reflected in how the campaigns are working on. If you are authentic, if you're using the right tone of voice, the engagement goes up. Let's take engagement as a standard KPI. The engagement goes up, sentiment goes up, and definitely something that is also translating to brand. It's not only for athletes, it's also a positive side for brands as well. And generally speaking, this is what is happening with this mix between sports and lifestyle. If you go through the list, we have several examples of this collaboration of these two words combined together. You have, for instance, fashion as one of the major, working closely with sports. Exactly. So you have, just to consider also other examples in the list, you have Leclerc from Formula One with Giorgio Armani. You have the first signature show made by Nike together with Rapinoe. So you have a lot of really super examples of how these two worlds can work together, and in this way also bring new audience, new passionates to the sport. Because a lot of, especially the Gen Z, younger generations, are following individuals, are following athletes, because of all the authenticity and all these other passions outside of sports that they have. But at the end of the day, they are also building a passion for sports they are participating in. It's what happened with Charles Leclerc for Formula One, with several younger stars in tennis, Coco Gauff, Naomi Osaka, and so many of them. So this is absolutely another key trend.
Yeah, and Dina, you were nodding your head. Obviously,
no, I completely agree. I'm sure when I say this, I'm sure my agent's probably listening somewhere in the midst of people out there. He'll roll his eyes because he's heard me say this about 1 billion times over the past 2 years. But whenever I engage with a sponsor with a wide reach, particularly into the female-led or the female-leaning market, so fashion, beauty, cosmetics, all those kind of things, red carpet, Hollywood, it sounds really boring, but sometimes I believe as sportswomen we need to lean into that to get them and then lean back. So we kind of lean in, so we engage with their fans, they like us, they grab us, and then we go to the Olympics, and then you have a new generation of women who are not only engaged with the Olympics and engaged with you, but ultimately the most important thing is getting them to kind of value themselves for being more than what they look like, which is a different tangent for what we're doing. But I mean, when I talk to young girls in school, so many of them are scared of getting into sports because they have anxiety around periods, they have anxiety around sweating, they don't want to get muscular, or all these kind of old-fashioned gendered stereotypes. So I always say, if we can show that sportswomen are valued within the idea of femininity. So that's fashion, that's cosmetics, that's red carpets, all those stuff that you tend to see on Vogue and all those glossy magazines that aren't always relevant to our lives, but they dictate what it means to be, quote, a woman, and they're changing too. But as long as if we get a mention in a space in there, then we can show that womanhood in sports is part of it. And we have so many fantastic messages to deliver to the younger generation, mainly about being healthy, mainly about looking after yourself, your physical and mental health, and obviously promoting high self-esteem. So that is something that I'm really, really big on. So yeah, you lean into the big female market and then you take them back with your message. And that's something that, that's my authenticity. That's basically why and what you can see running through all of my partnerships, and hopefully by the time I've retired and stuff, it ties up really nicely. And you've got a whole generation of women in the UK that are totally going out there, they're sprinting, they're running, they're lifting heavy weights, and they're not bothered about whether they're sweating or whether they've got muscles or, you know, all those things that people tend to have hang-ups with. We want an active young generation, and that's something that I talk to with all of my partners. And I say, by the time we end our partnership, whether that's 3-4 years or 8 years or 12 years, or we do a lifetime deal, you've got to know that to be with me, we're about promoting healthy body image and good role models for young women. So we always have to be on the same page, and that's my goal by the time I retire. So yeah, that's why I say 100% yes with the fashion. I mean, I love fashion anyway, because I'm totally into it anyway, but also there's a strategy for me around that I've always had. I kind of studied how this stuff and all that works at uni. So doing that and analyzing how marketing and particularly how it's worked throughout time, it made me really, really want to just always promote positive images, because I definitely understand the power of that, and not just for selling stuff, you know, for people's actual lives.
Absolutely. And that's what I think is so cool about you, is that you actually have a purpose and you want to use your visibility and your platform and your brands to tell the message to actually further society, rather than just, you know, like making money or helping the sport. I think
I mean, money's fab. I know, my agent's going to roll his eyes at me. Sorry. No, but money's fab. It's nice. But at the end of the day, like, I think what makes you, what is good is when you walk into a primary school and like literally the kids are freaking out and you see them all run around, and you want people to stay in sport and they want to be healthy. They don't have to be career sportswomen. They don't have to like go on to the Olympics. Like, I'm not saying that, but I just love so many more young women to have a better relationship with their bodies, their self-esteem, and obviously sport. And when you come back from major championships and you see all these young girls like running around the playground, or they're sending you videos of them sprinting up and down, or even telling you to go, they joined a football club or whatever because I told them go and be active. I think that's the most important thing, because it's about what you can do for the next generation. And that's not going to be a time that we can do, like, that's not going to be a change we can make this month or next week or even in a year. Like, it's just it's a legacy thing. And that's what's important to me at the end of the day.
It's amazing. It's really, really cool. Amen to all of that. Really cool. But Salvatore, so picking up on what Dina said, I think visibility is actually a really interesting topic. So in track and field, and you guys are Olympic athletes too, Olympics obviously has men's and women's equally on TV, right? So you have equal visibility. So looking at that list, actually, of the top 50 most marketable, I didn't find it that surprising that more of the sports that were individual sports that have more visibility on TV, like the tennis, like the surfing, like all the Olympic sports, skateboarding, Sky Brown's in there as well, and obviously track and field, that they happen to be on that list, whereas other sports that aren't on TV or don't have as much visibility might not be on there. So how important is visibility and having role models like Dina to marketability of an athlete?
Well, it's another super important point for sure, because at the end of the day, especially what we have seen this year, it's been a super tough year for sports, 2020, with sports being stopped for months and months. At the end of the day, after creating a link with the athletes, having the possibility to see them in action, it's what is really making the difference. So also the opportunity to, after you as a young person following an athlete on Instagram, you see everything about their personal life, but then at the end of the day, being able to watch at the television what they are doing on the pitch is definitely what is making the difference. In terms of comprehension, 360 degrees of their world. And this is absolutely key. But what we can see in the list is also how snackable sports are relevant today. we talk about a lot of individual sports, which are super important, but also other sports like MMA, for instance, and basketball. Yeah, we mentioned a lot of them. The way they are creating contents and spreading contents, not only on television, but also on social, is what is really appealing to younger generation. And this is why they are able to build such a following base among the younger generation. If you combine these to the general trends that we all know from research and researches, that younger generations are more willing to follow individual athletes than teams, you got a sense of why we build the list in that way.
Yeah, so interesting. And so on that, Dina, you were obviously from quite young, thrown into the spotlight. You won BBC's Young Spotty Awards, which I went to last year for the first time, which was so much fun. So you were quite young. So how do you make sure, talking about authenticity as your hub, how do you make sure that you stay true to that brand? How important was your family? How important are your friends? How important are your agent, who you keep calling out to?
Who probably WhatsApp me afterwards, like, why did you say that? Sorry. But yeah.
There you go. But yeah, how important is that support team to sort of creating, making sure you know who you are, your identity, your values, staying true to that? Because it's obviously very important to your decisions.
Yeah, it's essential. And to be fair, they're so important. But to me, it's been pretty easy to always be myself, because I'm just very open and always myself anyway. So it's never something I've had to consciously do. And I've had the same coach since I was 8 years old. I've been with the same agent since I was 18, 17, been with the same major sponsor since I was 16. And obviously I've been with my parents since I was born. Yeah. So for me, it's just, my home environment is very consistent and the people around me are very consistent. So it doesn't even matter what I do on track or how many things I'm able to achieve. The people around me and the people that love me and ride for me, as I say, they're always the same and they're very constant. So in terms of authenticity, that's just me. It's my life, Yeah. And I'm not one of these people that likes to switch up everything when something good happens. My life doesn't work like that. And at the end of the day, I've been very successful so far and things have worked out. Why is the need to change anything if one good thing happens, So yeah, but I'm super close to my parents, super close to my coach, and yeah, we have a real little family environment, so I'm all good. I'm just comfy.
Yeah, it's so nice. It's so nice because you see sometimes, athletes coming through that pathway and they may lose, and they may start out as very authentic, but like you said, the money is sort of waved at them and things. So it's great to hear. It's really nice.
I mean, yeah, I do. Yeah, I definitely see that a lot. And you see, lots and lots of people that just kind of, they don't necessarily lose themselves. I don't like the idea of losing themselves, but they go with what they think they're supposed to do rather than who they are. But I do think having people around you that just are the same, they're normal, and they're there for you as well. I know that my family, my coach, are there for me as Dina the person, you know. And I've always said that if I wanted to quit track and field tomorrow, don't worry, I'm not going to. I don't plan on it. But if I turn around to my parents and I just went on a little Zoom call with them and I was like, look, I'm not liking it anymore, they'd be shocked, they'd be stunned, but they'd be like, okay, so what's next? How can we help you? Let's tie up your business account, you know. And there'll be no questions, there'll be no kind of pushing from them, because they just want me to be happy. And it's the same with my coach. They just want me to be happy. Of course, they want me to be the best person, the best athlete I can be, but that's only if I'm happy as a person as well. So that makes it just really easy to be comfortable, really easy to just be happy and perform to the best of your ability when you know that you have such a solid foundation behind you.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, so I'm going to take a question from the Peanut Gallery here. We have one from Chris Hurst. I think it's a good one for you, Salvatore, and Dina as well. But how can female athletes and teams be made more visible in marketing campaigns? And how can data play a role in encouraging greater investment into women's sport? I always find this one, I've worked at FIFA for a number of years, and my biggest thing was always, if you can't prove that it's a market worth investing in, they don't want to invest in it. So the data, for me, plays such an important role. But I think I'm speaking to the choir, Salvatore.
No, this is great. This is a very great question. And I really think that this is the right momentum, to spread this more, because brands, as I was saying at the beginning, are becoming more sophisticated. So they're willing to listen stories which are based on data. And when we talk about, female athletes and teams, we have a lot of data showing the huge potential that they are playing. So in terms of how to create campaigns, how to leverage campaigns, how to, put campaigns in place with them, leveraging on data offer a great opportunity, because you can see how the engagement potential is huge, but you can also understand that we saw the slide from Dina breakdown, the unique audience you can reach by leveraging and working together this type of athletes. And also we saw a little box on the most relevant interests and affinities in terms of categories. So it's also something that you can use to actually build contents. If you see audience data and all these data sets that we can put together, analyzing female athletes and teams, you, at the end of the day, can understand the potential you can get in terms of engagement, the return you can get, and you can also understand the audience you should reach to and how to properly build the content, because all the data are in there.
Yeah, really interesting. And then just before we also have to close out, I think in a couple minutes, but talking about next year, so Japan and the Olympics, but how, also looking back, so how has COVID and the pandemic sort of affected the sport from a data standpoint, Salvatore and Dina, just from an athlete standpoint, in terms of the brand and marketability? Have there been disadvantages, but also maybe opportunities in that? Let's start with you, Salvatore.
Well, yeah, we've seen a lot of interesting stuff. We should be talking about hours and hours on how COVID active role in 2020 social ecosystem. Generally speaking, active sports in television stopped. Interaction with sports on social media didn't stop at all. So there was a lot of engagement, new audience coming in, playing directly with athletes, and brands took that as very inspirational, because basically they were able to build new campaigns, a new way to think about campaigns, leveraging on this COVID situation. So at the end of the day, talking about active sports, it's been super difficult for everyone. But in terms of opportunity as content generation and as a major movement, to switch what we were saying before from testimonial to creator was definitely the input for brands.
Yeah, what about you, Dina?
And well, from an athlete perspective, it's been interesting, really interesting, actually. I think personally, I've actually grown like new markets. Like I've definitely gone into a new space, particularly over the COVID period, and particularly after the Black Lives Matter movement and everything that happened over the summer. I think that loads of people's, and particularly people in marketing, their values have realigned. I think they've shifted on what's important. I mean, we've just had so many seismic events, and people have really taken a step back and they've thought, what's important to me? What would I want as a brand, or even as a person at that brand, what would I want my legacy to be? And how can I realize that? And who can I have to realize that? And I mean, I bang on about sportswomen all the time, but as I say, sportswomen are sometimes where you should put your money, because honestly, and like, I mean, I think I'm also in a unique situation, so I can't speak for all sports. I can't speak for all sports women, but the fact that the Olympics is going to be next summer, and it's going to be it's the biggest, hugest, most fantastic sporting event that we have anywhere, but it's also going to come at such a culturally crucial time when we've all been through this collective global trauma. And it's going to be, I believe, one of the things, hopefully, when we're out of it, when we start to come out of it, that we all kind of celebrate and we say, welcome back to our new world. That's where you want your brand to be. When we have that big, giant post-corona party, which will go down in the history books, it will go down in the medical books, it's going to be the great diversion of modern history, like you want to be seen at that moment. And can I ask you the previous question about female sports data and marketing? Like, because I was thinking, this is so off the tangent, but like sometimes when it comes to brands not wanting to invest until the data's there, like I'm not foolish, like you need to invest with the data, but sometimes brands need to be the change. Like I have this conversation with many brands all the time. Like sometimes they're like, oh, we're very scared to invest in this idea that you're having, or we're scared to put our money behind this campaign or this person because the evidence we have in front of us doesn't say that that's going to be a market. And I'm like, if I walked into every situation I had every day and I was scared to do something because there's no evidence of it happened before, I wouldn't be where I am. Like you're asking athletes to politically stand up for something that so much that before they would have been pilloried for, they would have been told that you're going to kill your market, you're going to lose your job if you don't make a stand. And I think that's also about authenticity. And sometimes like you have to be the change, and we work very hard to get the platforms we are, but we have to use them for something. And when we are, as athletes, we're world leaders, and as brands, you're dictating culture. Sometimes you have to, I'm not saying it's take a leap, because the data is there, like it's not quite take a leap. But sometimes when even if it's athletes with disabilities, or it's engaging with communities that maybe you haven't engaged with before, sometimes you have to be the change, and sometimes you just have to absolutely go for it, and you have to be the leader, and be the leader in that situation that so many want to see. Because at the moment, being first and being a pioneer, that's what loads of people are wanting to see, and taking the world forward into a more diverse, more equal, and more egalitarian world. And you have to do that by sometimes investing where your data hasn't taken you before. Like sometimes you have to do that, and it might be scary, and the board meeting might be looking at you if you propose it and thinking, if this doesn't work, you're going to lose your job. But honestly, as athletes, that's what we take those risks every single day. And the fact that so many of them always pay off. Well, they always pay off, but for me, I take educated risks, and they tend to pay off.
You're fast too, you know.
Yeah, that's why I am where I am today, and that's why so many of us are with the platform that we have. So that's all I would say to brands, is be the change. Like, you work very hard to have the influence that you do, but sometimes you have to then start to lead, and that's when you will start to see the real inroads, particularly with this generation. So yeah.
Definitely. I mean, mic drop on that one. Can you
It's something that I say to people all the time. Be the change. Don't
wait.
Great.
Absolutely. And I think, looking at it from a business standpoint, if everybody wanted to follow in everyone else's footsteps, we'd never had any entrepreneurs. We'd actually never progressed.
We follow in the bandwagon, and then nobody wants to be on the bandwagon.
Unless it's playing sports, and get on that bandwagon.
Let's win.
Salvatore, anything you wanted to add to that, or basically like jaw drop like me?
Exactly. I mean, after that one, I mean, nothing more I can add. It was just really, really great, on point, and I just agree on 100% of what Dina just said.
Yeah, cool. We have one really interesting question that was from Ernest, and he says, Dina, Ernest Obeng here, big shout out to you. But have you had enough support from the athletics establishment for being able to be creative and impactful and have relevancy in the work that you're doing, which helps keep our sport relevant? So we talk about you building your personal brand, but in terms of like the sport as a brand, I think it's a really interesting question.
I think it is a really interesting question. I think it's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think it's if I've had enough, because that kind of implies that there was a precedent for support off track in the first place. So it's not whether I've had enough, it's whether there's a history of our sport kind of doing that, and I don't think that's anything deliberate. I think that track and field is in a very transitional period. I think it's at a time where we need to, as a sport, really, really kind of communicate who we are and what we do better, because we're a very beautiful sport. Like, I've got best friends that are from around the world. They live in the Caribbean, they live in America, they're in Australia, they're in South Africa, they're all around Europe. I might see my friend from France, I'm like, and we've got a night out. Don't speak the same language, but we'll have a great time. And that's the magic of track and field. Like, we're a global community, and when we come together, nobody's looking at whether you're like a man or a woman. Nobody's looking at where you're from. It's just who's the best, who wins. We all work hard, we all respect each other, let's go. And I think that's one of the defining features of track and field. And I think that we have such a beautiful sport with so many diverse stories, so many personalities. We've got, when other sports are kind of amplify diversity, like track and field in its nature is diverse. It's just who is the best, and talent does not discriminate. So you've got people who are from all walks of life, had all sorts of life experiences. But I think we do need to get better at telling the stories, and I think that the sport could do more of that as well. But
Yeah, I agree. When
Yeah.
I remember when we walked into the food tent in London, 2012 Olympics, and like you'd walk past the sort of rowers and basketball players, and they were like that, and then you'd walk past the gymnasts, and they were like that, and you're just like, oh my God,
Yeah,
variety
it's
of.
so diverse.
It's incredible, really. It's an incredible sport, and I think you're right. And I mean, you're preaching to the choir to me, talking about more storytelling, because I think we don't do enough of that, especially for women and minority sports as well.
And the people who aren't winning as well, which might sound boring, but like, of course, everybody wants to talk to the winner, which is fab, but that doesn't mean that the person in 5th place who might have had malaria isn't a valid story either, which is legit. Like one of my friends had malaria, and then I think she got Olympic bronze in Rio. I think mad. Yeah, honestly, mad. She almost died, but because she didn't win, the story was out there in the UK, but it wasn't a story. But when you think about that, it's like, what, And I think we need to get better at storytelling and remembering that, sometimes the winner that's had a really easy life, a really easy ride and wins gold might be a fantastic, gleamy, glittering story. But sometimes the people who have had the up and down and just about scrape a bronze, that might be the story that makes people cry at home. So, it's about exploring the breadth of stories, not just I'm killing myself here because hopefully I am the one that wins, but not just the sparkly one at the top,
Yeah, definitely. Talking about home markets, because I think that's an interesting topic too. So when you look at like brands and how they invest, how important is it, Salvatore, when you're looking at marketability, that, Dina's obviously in the UK, that's a very strong market. The US is a very strong home market. How important is that for athletes as well in terms of their marketability?
Well, it's absolutely super important, but it really also depends on brands' objectives, especially when talking about marketability. Because in case like Dina's case, she's very, very great in local market like UK and US, as you said. But then what we see now in terms of strategies coming from brands is like also mixing different type of athletes together, because you can have different objectives like building awareness around a new global campaign. So you want to have some global stars which are able to be relevant all over the world. But at the same time, brands are also activating local athletes because they want to have a direct communication, a direct connection with local markets. And I will say that this is exactly the right strategy for brands, like mixing together different type of athletes in order to reach different objectives. And in my opinion, this authenticity, these storytelling capabilities we were just discussing, is what is really a key differentiator in working with athletes, especially when you want to build local communities and campaigns like the major brands want to do.
Yeah, it's so interesting because when I was captain of New Zealand, despite the accent, confusing, I know, but for me it was really hard because the Nike sponsorship was so small from New Zealand, even though I was playing in some of the biggest leagues. So I think it was always a struggle back when I was playing 100,000 years ago, that my home market wasn't really a strong one. So I do think it is an interesting one. And Dina, you've got sort of best of all worlds because you have a strong home market and you get to compete all over the
very
planet.
Lucky.
Yeah, well, you're not lucky.
Compete everywhere. Strong market in here, but one in Germany, one in Qatar. It's track and field's a very global sport. I'm very fortunate to be part of it.
Yeah, and you've spoken so well. Well, I think Chris has popped up on the screen, which probably means he's going to kick us off stage sometime soon. But I've genuinely had the best time with you, Dina and Salvatore. So interesting, such an interesting topic, and thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a great chat, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, apologies throughout the day. Whenever you see my face, that means we've got to end whatever we're talking about. But firstly, thanks for leading that conversation, Bex. And then also big thank you to Dina and Salvatore. I mean, that was a great session to start the day. I think everyone in the audience is going to be pretty pleased if that's the bar we've set. We've set it high. So good luck to everybody else trying to live up to that. But it was a great first session to start the day. For everybody in the audience, just a quick reminder, you don't need to touch anything. We will automatically transition you over into that next session. It's going to be an interesting look. We've got a retired NFL player, retired Major League Baseball player, and a retired former Tottenham, Celtics, Swiss international, all talking a little bit about how they're getting involved in tech and finance and sort of that transition post-career. So it should be a really interesting session. Thank you once again for everybody that's joined us, and we'll see you shortly on the other side.
Thank you.
See ya.